Hi, and thank you for tuning into this podcast. My name is Shay Douglas, and in this series, we explore community connection, optimal human potential, and transformational collective growth through inspiring conversations with a diverse range of people who are working towards a positive change in the world. I hope you enjoy this episode today, and if you would please take the time to like, share, and subscribe, we would greatly appreciate that. And I hope you enjoy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Tuesday episode of the Wise Women Conversations. My name is Shay Douglas, and today I have with me again the beautiful and wonderful Angie, Sally, and Colleen. Thank you, ladies, for joining me today.
Hello.
Hello.
I love these Tuesday afternoon conversations because we get to really dive into the sacredness of what it means to be a woman in today's world. And I have much to learn. That's why I'm asking all of these curious questions to learn from these ladies who have many years of experience and much wisdom through their life, the University of Life, as they've traveled on through their years with children and now grandchildren as well as aunties. And it's absolute pleasure to have you all here again today. Today we're going to explore in the last 3 weeks, we've looked at intuition. We've also explored finding more centered calmness in amongst the chaos of the world we find ourselves in. And we've even explored rites of passage. So today we're going to open up the conversation around motherhood, which is a really beautiful topic and something that I feel each three of you have so much insight on, being wonderful mothers to beautiful children. And just wanted to thank you guys for watching. I can see we've got a few of you tuning in. If you want to leave us a like, and if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. We will be corresponding via the comment section. So just drop it in the comments there, and I'd love to ask them any questions that you have. And if you like this video, please share it along with your friends. It would go a long way for us, and we'd greatly appreciate it. But let's start it out. What is the importance of reverencing sacred motherhood, ladies? And tell us a little bit about the roles of motherhood.
Good question.
Which mum wants to go? I'll start. I believe that the mother relationship is probably the fundamental relationship of the planet Earth and humanity. So it has a really huge influence on the type of humanity we create. So if you imagine that the family unit is the microcosm of humanity, then the mother would be the pinnacle. So for me, in the context of sacredness, I would suggest that the mother is the opportunity to influence the future of humanity. And with that, the lessons of motherhood, for me personally, are pretty much about expanding the heart space. So it's the nurturing, the compassion, the integrity, the honesty, the truthfulness, the openness that we have in relating with our children that is almost like an organic process because it's a natural instinct. So I think the sacredness it's essential to where we go as a human family. That's my wrap up.
Do you want to go next, Angie? I just thought, yeah.
You just want to unmute yourself there, Angie, and we'll be able to hear you. Thanks for your input there, Sal. Maybe, Colleen, if you don't mind sharing just while we work out. Angie's got her mic sorted.
That's all good. Yeah, I love that explanation, Sally, and I feel like that relationship for so many people, it's like one of the first relationships that we have as humans. So that bond with our mother, and it can be, healing and empowering, but there can also be wounding that gets involved in that and passed down from generations. So it can kind of go both ways, but it is one of the most important relationship roles, I feel, in our society. I think that sometimes we focus more on like raising children when it comes to mothering or motherhood, but for me, I found that the role or the journey of motherhood was, I learned so much about myself. Like, I had so much growth. I was the one doing a lot of changing and discovering, and my kids were teaching me just as much as I was teaching them. And when I fully stepped into that and really embraced that idea, it allowed for so much heart opening, like you were talking about, and sharing, and just understanding human nature and human behavior, and having to develop communication skills, really understanding kind of any default patternings or woundings that were within me that was showing up in that relationship as well with my children. So I think I discovered, I actually wrote a post about this not long ago, just because it was Cal's 21st birthday a couple of weeks ago, and he's my baby, but obviously an adult now. But just going down that memory lane of really realizing that, in pregnancy and birth and motherhood, that was when my intuition really got honed. I found my voice. As much as motherhood is about nurturing and providing that emotional space for growth, there's also very much that mother bear energy that comes out. So that protective and, standing up for those that are dependent or don't have their own voices yet. Finding strength that I didn't realize I had, because I'd never had to tap into that before. So it's such a big subject, but those were probably some of the pivotal things that I really that stood out for me. And also noticing probably in my own experience, the lack of support that there were for women. I know we talked about this briefly just before we started, but again, moving from another country, not having family here, so lucky and blessed to find you women in the community where I was living, but how much easier, how much what's the word I'm looking for? Just the fact that if you have that community, that whole thing about it takes a village to raise a child, and it's not just for the child, it's actually for the mother as well, too.
Yeah, that's gorgeous, Cole. I really hear you in, it is our first experience of other. And it's also, I actually, when I raced off just before we started, there was one of my favorite sayings around being a mother. I just grabbed it. I've got it on a little card. So it says, the moment a child is born, the mother is born. She never existed before. The woman existed, but the mother never. A mother is something absolutely new. And I love that. And I, in my parenting shops that I used to run many, many years ago, I think when I would share this, mothers would sit there and go, oh my God, that's so true. Like, I never knew of this experience until such time as I'm actually in it. And most of our training is done in the trenches. As Cole said, we learn on the job. And as much as we may have had mothers that have come before us, they also come with a lineage of wounding and a lineage of also learning on the job, like an experience of also learning on the job. And I, like Cole, and maybe you too, Sal, I'm not quite sure, didn't have that support around me. My mum came for 4 or 5 weeks, but I didn't live in the same town as my parents, and so it was really sort of just get in and learn on the job. And I think as mothers, when it is a new experience, like you take on this identity and it's an archetype, and Sel was talking about before we jumped on the call in relation to the mother archetype, and it's not just necessarily about mothering children, but carrying that mother, that nurturer within us, and whether or not we're mothering animals or we're mothering our own parents, we're parenting our parents as they get older. So there's all types of connotations in relation to the actual mother archetype as such. And I think one of the things, if you look at the language, which I really love looking at the language of mother, is a verb or a noun. As a verb, it's one who mothers. But as a noun, it's a title. So it comes with a sort of a sense of entitlement, a list of duties or obligations. If you're looking at one who mothers, which is very, I think it comes from the Native Americans. They welcome and revere mothers. And a lot of our Indigenous cultures do too, revere mothers as one who has resources and that can pass them on to their children, and that's encouraging and nurturing and nourishing. I think that's added to the juicy bits that you ladies have offered.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Seems to me, based upon what you both have shared, is that it's a tremendous journey of growth and ups and downs and learnings and expansion and deeper connections and relations. And I'm curious to hear from you around that journey for you, particularly maybe what was a kind of a high, rewarding, really beautiful moment in your journey as a mother, and also maybe potentially the challenges and lows. You kind of spoke to a little bit about the challenges of not having that support, and how potentially the current system of our society and the way that it's structured, where we're, if I speak to predominantly our history, in this paradigm that we find ourselves in, quite insulated and isolated households. A lot of the times, probably around 50% of marriages are ending in divorce. So we have, single mothers raising up a whole household of children, or sometimes in some situations, you have a mother and a father, but no uncles or aunties, or like you spoke to, or grandparents around to raise the child or to support the mother. And what would it look like for a really wholesome and supportive, nurturing, motherly environment moving forward in the societal structures that we could potentially create if we have the awareness, and just opening up the conversation around that, what it takes essentially for not just the child, but also the mother to feel fully supported in that process, and understanding the learnings that have been passed down in the journey of motherhood. So the short question for Angie, who just dropped out there, is essentially about the journey of motherhood. What is the challenges and also the rewards? And then what does it look like? Because what I heard from you ladies was that there are challenges based upon our societal structures. What does it look like to overcome those challenges and sort of structure the way that we live our lives and the way that our society operates to honor motherhood and have that support, have that nurturing environment? Or maybe it's a shift in values. I'm not sure. I'm curious to hear your perspective on those topics.
I would like to share a story about the mothering of my first child, which basically I had spent the pregnancy traveling through Asia with my partner, and arriving in Britain, heavily pregnant, and having Sasha was born there, and then actually waiting to leave the place so I could go to to mother and be in an environment which I felt more comfortable with, which was to actually go with a 6-month-old child to India. And for me, that felt more comfortable mothering and nursing my baby than it did being in the UK and in the society that we've created. So I felt more connection with these women that were, it was the village. Even though they weren't family or people, I felt more comfortable as a mother in that environment with my husband beside me, who was also equally caring. But that to me was the transition of actually accepting where we were in this parenting phase. So it was a really comfortable experience. And I think I took from that, I took the lessons of being fully focused on the child and not distracted from working and having all these other environmental inputs. And it was just the focus of just having that unit of family together. And that for me was a radical step, but it was a really confident, and it felt so comforting. So I guess it's finding out what really suits your particular mindset at the time, because each time you have a child, you're in a different phase as well. So for me, it was when I look back now, it seems like it was a major adventure, but it was completely comfortable within where I was at that point. Yeah, radical.
Yeah, I that's a beautiful story, Sal. I like hearing your birthing stories. I think in answer to one of your questions, Shay, what I would love to see in relation to, I don't think the culture supports just the miracle that is a woman being able to carry a child in her womb and deliver that child into the world. I'd like to see the pregnant woman really more revered as she comes into motherhood, and the support offered to her there, and more of an understanding too about the hormonal changes and how our body prepares us, and the changes that we have to go through in relation to our bodies. And sometimes it means it's a full adjustment of our external world and our internal world. And I know for me, when I had my first child 29 years ago, it's something that I felt like I'd come home to myself. I was actually more at home in my body as a woman than I'd ever been in my whole entire life, and which was a surprise to me and those around me, because I'd never seen myself, even though motherhood was definitely on my radar. I'd not sort of really even looked forward to it or embraced it as much as I did as soon as I had birthed my first child. And it was beautiful. And I found myself, back in the day, the idea was to stay home for the first 60 days or the first 6 weeks, is just to stay home and build that container and nurture and nourish and support and really have that skin to skin time and not too many external distractions, and really focus on that little baby just coming into themselves and opening their eyes and coming into the wonder and awe of the external world. And that's something that I actually really took the time out to do that. I stopped work and I gave the first 12 months to both. I've had 2 children, and that first 6-12 months for me, I actually chose to take time out. I was in an enviable position maybe, or I sacrificed to actually take that time out and to honour the first 6-12 months of my children's lives, so that I could be there to get to know them and to see what what their little natures were about and what they loved and what they who they were becoming in that first 6-12 months, because there's so many clues that they give you. And that's what I really, really treasured, is that first initial time in their lives. And it certainly gave me the time to think about what kind of mother I wanted to be and what vision I had for my child and how I wanted to parent, and which then led me to want to know more about myself. And in that, I discovered that there was this lack of parent education. And I actually went and did some study around that and studied parent effectiveness training and really learned how to consciously parent my child and how to listen to my children so that they'd talk, and how to talk so that they would listen. And so I gave myself some skills and ended up actually teaching some of these skills. But I think for me, it was about conscious.
Ooh, she dropped out there. I'm sure she'll be back in a moment. Here she is.
Sorry, but I don't know why this continues to happen, but it does. So yeah, lots of and it's a full journey, you know, the whole time, until I'm learning now how to kind of re-parent with my adult daughter at 29. You know, she hasn't lived at home for 10 years, and so we're going through a process of mother-daughter re-parenting and really noticing the separation and her own individuation process. And I think that's an important part of mothering too, is when your children get to that stage where it's time for them to leave the nest. And then as a mother, we go through empty nest, and that's a real thing. So there's so many transitional phases, not just the child goes through, but every time the child changes, the mother changes. And I probably jumped a little bit all over the place just then because of my losing connection, but I absolutely love mothering. It's one of the things that I love. It's where I put a lot of my time and energy into, not just myself, but supporting other mothers and parent education.
Nice.
Yeah, I love both of those wise words, both Val and Angie, and I think the word conscious mothering kind of really stands out for me in that discussion. And I know I'd moved just to Australia, and I hadn't been here that long when my first child was born. And looking back at those days, it in some ways I feel like I was really lucky, because I just kind of stumbled into it and I just went with the flow. And for me, there was a lot of things that came naturally just by like listening and tuning in, and then just having to figure out things by the very nature of not having a support network around. And again, I loved those early years with the kids. For me, I knew that if, even before I had children, I knew that if I was going to step into a parenting role, that I wanted to be fully present as much as I could with the kids, and really immerse myself in that experience and be there for them in those critical first years. I do notice a lot of moms really like that burnout is a real thing, because many of them, either by choice or just by necessity, are having to juggle so many different roles in the home and in career, and it really is a 24/7 job at the end of the day. And I've always felt that it was kind of one of the most important jobs or roles in humanity and society, because at the end of the day, these children are going to grow up and be the future adults that are going to be in charge of business or government or any kind of culture programs that we're creating. So I found, again, like Angie talked about, how as I had 3 kids. So being a mom of 1 child is very different to being a mother of 2 children. And then it's totally different again, being a mother of 3 children and having to navigate all those different personalities and needs and wants in your own, as well as your partners. So, because in that family dynamic, you've got your significant other in that role as well. And then as the children are getting to different stages and ages in life and their needs change, and so being able to read that and understand that and how to navigate that, there were some stages I definitely navigated better than others. I found in my own personal experience, especially those teenage years, in my oldest daughter, just really noticing like things coming up for myself that I really had to look at. And that was things like, my beliefs, my communication styles, my fears, all of those things were becoming very evident as she was approaching those years. And I had to really look and tap into that and do some healing around that for myself, so that I could show up being the best version of myself as a mother for her. And they were definitely rocky times. And as a first child, that tends to be the case. They kind of lead the way for helping your parent journey. But if you persevere and you both grow together and you both you recognize the healing that needs to be done, and you take ownership of that, and you take responsibility for that. So your emotional states and the beliefs or the healings that are not really serving who you want to show up as in that dynamic, there's just so much growth that can come from it. And now obviously all my children are in those adult years, are all in their 20s. And I look back now and I think when they were little, there was that whole idea of, I loved the fact that there was just somebody that just loved you unconditionally. I think for a lot of moms, that might be one of the really first times that we go through and we experience that. And then I chuckle because when they become teenagers and they really get their own voice, that love may not be so unconditional. And it's a real, opportunity for you to kind of tap into your insecurities and your wounds around that. And now, as my children have all grown up, I'm really blessed and really, really lucky. I'm aware and being able to have conversations with them now in their 20s and asking them, how they felt in those stages and what they noticed as well. And so much healing that has happened. And, I have now a wonderful relationship with all 3 of my kids. And so looking back at those times, like there might be some moms here that have teenagers or are struggling with, how to navigate some of the challenges that are coming up. And I guess for me, it was just about persevering and taking ownership of my stuff in that dynamic, and how that's led to this incredible relationship with my daughter as she got older, and could recognize that as well too. So just being honest and reaching out for support, like Angie, I had to do the same. I knew that I needed help with everything from understanding my emotional regulation and how to communicate. And so there were little courses that I found in my community through some of the charity groups that was I found very helpful. And books, there's always, and now you've got online and YouTube and so many other resources. But I started a women's group up in Cairns around that time too, and it was more for me, to be honest, than for everybody else, even though everybody benefited from it, because we do definitely need that support network.
Nice.
Yeah, beautifully said, ladies. Thank you all for sharing your stories. And I am a testament to share, all of your children are just wonderful humans in the world and are doing amazing things. And it's an absolute privilege to have you in my life. And I'm curious, because you spoke to essentially the challenges and the support that may be missing sometimes. And I have a question that I'm curious to hear from you, what your answer would be. But before I do that, I just want to honor Sarah Snodgrass. She's just chimed in with a few little comments there. Hello, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. And also Miss Matriki, who is a daughter, teen, adult, mother, divorcee, grandmother, wife. or single mother, then we get lost and we find ourselves, which is what you're speaking to, is finding yourself as a mother, with your children. But no one has spoken to the relationship with your mother. You've all spoken to the role of the mother. However, what I am curious to hear is from the perspective of a child. You're the child, and your relationship from that perspective to your own mother. Before I have one last little question we'll squeeze in. We're trying to keep these chats to 30 minutes, but they always seem to roll over because you just have so much great insight to share. So just quickly, maybe if you want to touch on what's relevant around the relationship of being the child and how, and your experience with your own mother.
Wow, that's a massive one, that one. I'm in a very unusual situation. As being an adopted child, my relationship to my mother was having an awareness that I was always adopted. It gave me an opportunity to explore that I may be of a different breed. So I think it opened my mind to looking at different ways of being and seeing the world, and not necessarily taking on board the patterns that I was in the environment of. So it wasn't until a lot later in life that once I'd actually become a mother to two of my children and was pregnant with a third, that I actually found my birth mother.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and for listening to this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this series, and if you'd like to listen to the full episode and get more conscious content online, tune into our online video platform at earthheroestv.com. Hope you have a great day, guys, and a huge love from me, and see you next time.